Hello and welcome to TOA's webinar for March. It's been a busy month for us. We've been on roadshow for most of March, and then for a lot of you we saw at Accounting Business Expo last week. So I'll just quick check to make sure everyone can hear me. If you can just put in the chat box, which is on your screen, if you can hear me and everything's okay. So just put in there a hello, and we'll then get started, just making sure everyone can hear us. Wonderful, Darren, Mark, hello, Jonathan, Sue, Anita, wonderful. So seems like everyone can hear us, so we'll get started. So before we start the main part of the presentation today, we're just going to quickly go straight into a poll, what stage are you at with considering outsourcing or offshoring? So we're just going to run the poll quickly. So we already have a team up and running. There's no team, but we outsourced some tasks, decided to do it, but not yet implemented. Need more information, or I'm against it. So if we'll just quickly run this poll for about a minute, it'll give us a little bit of an indication on who's the call today, so that we can make sure that we obviously tailor what we're talking about today to the audience that is on today. So most are coming through, decided to do it. So about 40% decided to do it, but not yet implemented. And a large part is needing more information. So only a very small amount of you, about 5% of you have got a team, and a few are doing no team, but we outsource some tasks. We might just move straight into the webinar then. So it's great to have you all on the webinar. Obviously, a lot of you that are not doing it or need more information. We're going to cover a lot of content today, so it is going to be a jam-packed hour. And we will have questions at the end. But if you do have any questions you want to ask throughout the webinar, please pop them into the question box, and we'll answer them as best we can when we get time throughout the presentation. So just a little bit around what we're seeing. So we've been on the road for the last, or close to month. We've been talking at different events. So we had our TOA roadshow around the country, where we spoke to over 200 accounting firms. We've also been at Accounting Business Expo last week, and we're seeing some real growth happening in the industry at the moment, particularly within our business. We've got some real strong growth across bookkeeping at the moment. Seems to be one of the fastest growing. So we've had over 50 requests for new team members this month, and about 40% of them are coming through our bookkeepers. A large part are coming through EAs. I just finished a podcast interview with one of our clients, and she's implemented an EA about 6 months ago on the back of my advice. And really, the thing that I found really fascinating by this is it saved her 3.5 hours a week in her own time by just having someone else managing that parts of her affairs. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that throughout the day, but we are seeing some real growth. I'll talk a little bit about our journey before we get into the content today, but for those that don't know about the outsourced accountant, we've been up and running since 2013. So we've had some strong growth over the years, and at the moment we're 765 staff, where there's over 140 roles in recruiting, and we're just seeing accounting firms are really starting to focus on growing their capacity and growing their team, and trying to really build out their overall global strategy for people. And it's one of the big areas we're going to talk about a lot today is, what is your people strategy? Being on the road for the last month, we've just found that 99% of accounting firms have not mapped out what their capacity needs to be in line with, or their people strategy in line with what their revenue targets are. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. So some of the core things that we're going to focus on today is some research around accounting firms in Australia and what the research is showing us these profiles of these accounting firms are. We're going to talk about some of the big issues that we've been seeing for the last month. We're going to talk about your support to grow and how building a global team can fall into that. We're going to talk about some case studies, business cases and models, just from some of our clients that are really making this work and succeed. We've got a playbook which we've written, which covers off process, technology, people, selecting a partner, how to get an offshore team up and running. I am going to run through parts of that content, but it is available as an ebook on our website, where it's over 100 pages of content, which really shows you the playbook to building and growing an offshore team. But I'm going to cover off some of the highlights and key points of that today throughout the webinar. Now, just starting around a typical profile of an accounting firm, and I spoke a lot about this on our roadshow to both our clients and prospects, and also at a little bit last week at the Accounting Business Expo when I was talking, because accounting firms just don't. I suppose there's so many different ways to run accounting firms. There's no right or wrong way, and there's different services we offer. But I want to talk about the research that's been done by the Good, Bad, and Ugly report. So if you haven't heard of it, highly recommend going and looking at this report. I'm just giving you a very snapshot of this today. But if we look at a typical accounting firm in Australia, revenue of 2.2 million, expenses of 1.4 million. The takeaways that I took from this research is the good news is accounting firms are profitable. The thing that really stuck out to me as a real flag and an issue is around cash flow. And this comes down to WIP days, which on average for a firm is 25 days. Now, I know for some firms, they would love it to be that low. Others are a lot worse than that. But what we're also seeing is the debtor days is 52 days. And that's the one that stands out to me, is that on average, it's taking an accounting firm 52 days to get paid once they complete the work. That flows on to WIP days are taking too long. Most firms don't even charge for their time to WIP, which means they're doing work, they're following up work, but they're not actually getting any revenue from this, which is, in itself needs a strategy around that. We're seeing a typical client profile of 280 clients per partner. Average group fees are $3,500. That part I see as being quite low, given most accounting firms are focusing on small businesses. We're seeing client acquisition at about 6.8% growth, which again, I see a lot of firms, or I suppose a lot of our firms, are growing at a faster rate. The big one that I see here is cost of acquiring a new client. Now, when we talk to accountants, and we talk to hundreds of accountants every week, one of the big things that we ask them is, are you growing with new clients or are you focusing on existing clients? And a lot of the time the answer is both. But what we see is that most accounting firms don't have the capacity to actually get all their work done on time and to be able to actually lodge as per the deadlines, but yet they're continuing to take on new clients. Now, I asked one question on the roadshow to over 200 firms, and the question was, how many of you could honestly say that you ring your clients more than twice a year to just ring and say hi, to just ring and see how they are? And there was probably less than 12 people for the whole roadshow. And what that shows is that we just don't have a thing called time and capacity. And that's really down to workflow management, people management, a range of factors, but yet we're still trying to go out there and get new clients. But the reality is we probably can't even manage the ones that we've got and meeting the deadlines with it. So when we talk around some of the issues that we're seeing that are coming from this, one of the big issues is around paper. So firms are still too paper-based. They're not really utilizing the full extent of technology, digital signatures and everything else. There's still too much paper-focused. We spoke to one firm, or several firms throughout the roadshow around how they're managing paper, and one of the firms come up to us and said, look, we use Receipt Bank with our clients, but where a client won't use it, what we will do is we will get them to bring all their receipts in. We take the photos of the receipts. It then automatically gets uploaded. We believe that this saved us anywhere between 4 and 8 hours on this job alone, just because the technology will do it, and all we did is take photos. Now, what we saw was that a lot of firms are still not doing that. They would actually get the receipts and have their accountants physically entering this data in. The big issue that we're also seeing is around technology sprawl. There is so much technology now out there. There's not only the main 3 accounting platforms, there's now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of systems in the ecosystem that are there, and it's really technology paralysis. People are just seeing so much technology that they either put in too much and don't use it, or they don't put in enough to actually add some value. And one of the things that we talked a lot about was get your onboarding, your initial engagement agreement and onboarding process right, get your accounting stack and workflow management under control, and then obviously looking at value-added technologies that you can plug into this ecosystem, and then looking at some very fine niche markets of what do your clients typically use and what systems can you put in. But this all flows back to a lot of accountants that we spoke to just don't have time, or have very limited time for their clients, which is a real direct, I suppose, for me, it's, well, aren't clients our business? Isn't that what we have accounting firms for? A lot of accounting firms don't have metrics. They don't have clear KPIs other than maybe time on a job. The metrics that they're measuring are very limited, and a lot of accountants are working a lot of hours. It's fascinating to see how many hours some accountants are working, when on the flip side, a lot of our clients are focusing on only getting their Australian team at, say, 50% productivity, having their offshore and global team only at 70% capacity, so they always have time to be able to take on new clients or new work. That also promotes a work-life balance, meaning that they only need to work set hours. They're not having to come in and work excessive hours, which comes back to, are you going to attract the best staff when you're expecting so many hours out of them and there is no balance in life for them, and they, their journey to becoming a partner is just do more hours. This all leads back to probably the biggest issue that we're seeing, which is, what is your people strategy? And I'll ask you all now, have you actually mapped out a people strategy that meets your revenue plan? Have you worked out your capacity plan? I was talking to Ed Chan, and Chan and Naylor are a great supporter of ours. And I spoke to him at a Accounting Business Expo last week. And one thing he said to me is that, Nick, a lot of times that when he does mentoring and coaching with accountants, he coaches them on building out what is their capacity. And it can work two ways. A lot of firms think they don't have the capacity, but when they actually map it out, they in fact have too many employees, but their workflow isn't managed properly, which is why they cannot meet deadlines. The flip side of that is a large amount of firms haven't mapped out what the strategy is. They simply set revenue targets and they don't have enough capacity to ever be able to achieve them. And what that means is the existing staff have to work a lot more hours to be able to achieve what the business goals are, which burns them out. Longevity of employee doesn't, the employees don't stay around long term, means bringing on new staff and training. So we see a real issue or disconnect with accounting firms where they just don't map out what their people strategy is for the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I mentioned earlier, I had a great podcast interview with Kimberly from Adrian's that comes out in about 3 weeks' time, so I highly recommend you listen to it. But they've mapped out a 5-year strategy with every single employee. What are your career plans for the next 5 years? And then they've aligned that to what their firm's 5 and 10-year people strategy is, so that they're ensuring that where their business is going is in line with the needs, I suppose, of their team members, and they're growing their team members as the business continues to grow. So my question is have you done that for your team? Have you mapped that out? Have you mapped out your capacity for the year ahead to meet your current revenue targets? So when we're going through this, a lot of firms just haven't done their people strategy, and a big part of it is they don't know where to start. And a lot of the time they look at offshoring and look at that as a strategy that they want to implement, but they don't know where to start. They don't know how to start and what they should be doing first. So a question that we're going to ask you now, which we're going to run as a poll, have you mapped your capacity for the year ahead to meet your revenue targets? 3 quick and easy ones for you to do. Yes, no, but I'd love help doing this. So just a quick snapshot of the results coming through. 30% saying yes, about 45% saying no, about 20% saying no, but I'd love some help. So we might just close that poll off. We'll keep moving through. So it is tough out there. We understand that there's so much going on, and there's a lot for you to be consuming with your workload, with people strategy, with the firm strategy, and it is a process. It really is around how do we build a team, and in a lot of cases, the firms we're talking to are building a global team, and there's many steps involved. So you can get help with this. Part of our global technology, or our global team specialist, their role is to really help you as a firm map out what this people strategy is and help you start to build a team that is in a global environment, both locally and offshore, that can continue to grow as the firm grows, and getting the right people to do the right work at the right cost and the right time. And that's really the key part around that. So when we're looking at community, and this is probably one of the biggest things around this, is accounting firms, it's a hard journey. People just don't know where to start. What we're trying to do, one of our focuses at TOA is to get all of our clients together, to get them into a community where they can learn and grow from each other. A lot of our clients have been doing this for 5+ years. It's not something that's new. They've made a lot of the mistakes that when you're going through this journey and it's really the unknown and uncertain, they've been through these processes. Some of the ways that we do this is with our own TOA Ignite Facebook group, where all of our clients can work together. They have questions around communication or other things, they put them through there. We have podcasts, we have monthly live webinars for our clients. We have peer-to-peer learning, so twice a year we go around Australia for our Australian clients, and we actually meet and get them all in a room. So in Melbourne, we had over 60 people in the room. Sydney was similar. Brisbane was about 50, where we can just get accountants in the room and talk around their global team's journey and how do they maximize building and growing a team. And the takeaways that our clients have from this is really, really fascinating. And I'm going to talk about a few case studies now of clients of ours that have got their teams up and running for different reasons or different niches. And I'm going to talk around, I suppose, the case studies. So Tyler is one of our US clients. From a firm called Measured Results in the US. They were only a small firm, so they only had 14 members in the US. This was 14 months ago. They then set up a team in the Philippines with 2 staff members. If you fast tracked forward 12 months later, they then doubled their team in the US. So they had 8 team members in the US. They'd taken their offshore team to 4, and they were looking in this current financial year, when bearing in mind the US are in their tax season now, they're looking at doubling that again. Now, for a small firm, it's really hard to be able to afford to hire the costs onshore. So a lot of their strategy was around how do we build capacity cost effectively so that we can continue to grow the business, but then we can also grow our local team members and really buy the A players that we want to have here and have them doing the right type of work. So it was a fascinating webinar that we did with him. I mean, his revenue increased 62% in the year, pre-partner profit increased by 130%. They've only been operating a couple of years, but they're going to hit the $1 million worth of growth is what their focus is, and they're well on track. So I think the story behind this case study is really around, it's going to be growing your local team as well as your global team. And it's really around mapping out what is the revenue target, what's the capacity that you need to be able to achieve that, and how can you do that cost effectively, particularly if you're a new firm or in really high growth phase where you're utilizing the cash to grow as opposed to, I suppose, taking the large profits as opposed to some of the more matured firms. So then a few other case studies I'll talk about is Mark Said from MKS Group, so sole practitioner in Moonee Ponds in Melbourne. Now he's got a team locally of, I think it's 13 staff now in Australia, and he's got a team overseas of 12 staff. His story is around offshoring. He was our second client, so he's now been on this journey. It will be 5 years this year, and he really focuses on a niche around franchising. So he's able to offer the franchisor an accounting offering, but then he's able to also offer a virtual CFO offering to each of the franchisees underneath that franchise group. They can then benchmark profitability against each other, costs against each other, revenue growth against each other, all the key metrics that a franchise needs using systems like Spotlight, etc. But he was able to do this where he could offer a real cost-effective solution. He charges the same rates that he would charge in Australia, but what he was able to do is he was able to add significant value to a level below, which is the franchisees, on a monthly basis by helping them grow their firms and their businesses. And Mark's had some great success. Like I said, he's pretty much one offshore staff member for every one local, and he's just been growing this, and it's been really adding some significant value. One of the things that I love about Mark's firm is that all of his Australian staff have to call 3 clients every single day. They have to visit 5 clients at their premises every week. Now, I'd ask this question to anyone on the webinar today. Are your expectations of your staff that high where you're asking them in Australia to be calling your clients and visiting your clients on a weekly basis? Now, guess what those calls and visits do? They build trust and they always get more work. But they're really building a level of value and service that would be very hard for a competing accounting firm to come in, even if their pricing was different or cheaper. Another one of our case studies is from Jerry, who's a Perth accountant. So he is a qualified accountant, but he only offers a bookkeeping and back office service to large corporate clients now. So he was a sole practitioner. Simple story, ex-army, very process focused, very driven around procedures and systems. And a lot of his focus was, when he started his practice, was he didn't have the ability for him to grow his team in Australia locally because of obviously being a startup business. So what he's been able to do over a 2.5 year period is grow his Philippines team. He's now got 6 team members. It will soon be 7. And he's able to now scale and continue to grow both locally and overseas. So he's looking at Australian resources, as well as being able to deliver an overseas team that is going to be able to deliver any of the capability. Now, his team work with their clients directly. So he sets up the relationship with the client, the workflow, the payrolls, and that are all done by the global team and working directly with their clients. So I spoke a lot about our growth around bookkeeping roles, particularly at the moment. 40% of our current roles from this month, there's 50 new roles in bookkeeping. And a large part of this was we went around in our roadshow and talked around the business case for bookkeeping. And I'm going to talk about this in a very, very quick snapshot today. But we do have a lot more content around this if you do want to learn more about this. The business case for bookkeeping really comes around when I had a financial planning firm many years ago in an accounting practice. I looked at how do I attract clients to our firm, because typically a client of an accounting firm, they don't leave. And that's one of the amazing things within the accounting space, and I say this all the time, is that we can offer really, really bad service, but yet our clients still won't leave us. It's too hard to leave. But what we are seeing now is with the cloud technologies and systems now, it's a lot easier to leave your accountant. What we're also seeing is that the trusted advisor, who is the real trusted advisor? So a lot of the times in the clients or in the accountant's world is that we think we are the trusted advisors. Now, when you look at any of the research that's been put out over the last couple of years, accountants are typically number 16 or below on the list of trusted advisors. Now, I think a lot of this comes back to accounting firms are known to charge clients if they come in and ask, if they want to ring and ask for some advice or questions. So in a lot of cases, clients are more inclined to ask their family or friends rather than ringing us and getting a bill for the 15-minute chat that they spoke to. Now, obviously, this is changing with fixed pricing, and a lot of accounting firms are trying to change this so that the clients do call. But what we're seeing is that bookkeepers are really, in my opinion, starting to really edge in and become the trusted advisors. They're talking to their clients on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis. They're regularly having coffee and seeing them on a regular basis. So we're starting to see that bookkeepers are now offering other additional services. They're not just doing the books, because now technology is starting to do a lot of that work. So we're seeing that they're now coming in and providing a lot more management reporting, a lot more advisory reporting, a lot more advice as opposed to just bookkeeping. We've also got some really large bookkeeping firms that have got over 30 staff in Australia. And what they're looking to do now is diversify their revenue streams. They're looking at how do we add in accounting services? How do we add in finance services? How do we add in financial planning services? So there's a real risk around a bookkeeper is going to start taking clients off you in the future. And we see the real case for a bookkeeping division within an accounting firm being there is significant revenue increase, but the real benefit is you're fencing your clients in, but you're also making your compliance work so much more tidy, so much cleaner, and so much easier to be able to do, because you're doing the books on a daily or weekly basis. Come the end of financial year, from a lodgement and tax point of view, it's a very simple process. There's a collection of some additional documents, and then it's just simply fine-tune, lodge, as opposed to a lot of accounting firms that are still doing it, and it's taking a long time, and they're missing deadlines and missing extensions. So when we're looking at the case for a bookkeeping division, if we look at a typical firm has 580 clients, if we look at it and say, all right, let's just get 300 of the business clients, let's put them on a $600 a month package, and the bookkeeper that you have employed, and again, this will only be at 30 clients per bookkeeper, if you're using the right technology like Receipt Bank or HubDoc and cloud software. That's another conversation, but what we're assuming is that on average it's 30 clients per bookkeeper. Your offshore team of 10 will cost 18,000 in total, on an average of 1,800 per team member. Your onshore team, because you always need local representation driving this. You can't simply just say we offer bookkeeping, put it onto your bookkeepers. You need specialists that are the onshore onboarding people. They're the ones that are communicating and talking to your clients on a regular basis. These costs, we've said 80,000 salary, two of them 13,000, so it gives you a total team cost of 31,000 a month. If you're looking at the revenue opportunity though, it's 180,000 a month. So after your team costs, you're making around an 83% margin. Now, obviously you need to take into account software costs, there's office costs for your local team, there's other ongoing costs for running the practice in Australia, marketing, advertising, etc. But the reality is it gives a real strong business case, because if we're looking at a typical firm has 580 clients and we're saying only have 300 of them, and it's an additional $180,000 a month in revenue. Now, if you go back to the good, bad, and ugly report that we were talking about earlier, it speaks around the average revenue is 2.2 million. So we're almost increasing revenue by 50%, and you're significantly increasing the margin on the work. So there's a real strong case for bookkeeping as a division within an accounting firm. And like I said, it's the fastest growing area within our business at the moment. So when we talk around outsourcing, what is the right model for you? Because there are several models. Our model is one way, but there are different options that you do have. So what are these options? So one of them is outsourcing, which a few of you mentioned when we ran the poll earlier that you are sending some task offshore, but that's really around sending a business activity to a provider to return the work. Now, what we've seen in the outsourcing space commonly is these are in India. There's a few in Vietnam. There's not a lot in the Philippines where it is project-based. Most of that is out of India and Vietnam. And what we see in a lot of cases is the success of the BPO or the provider doing the work for you is actually a detriment to you, because the more work they get, the more people they need to train, which means they need to bring the people in. And as you know, in a firm, if you have a huge amount of work, you need to bring in new staff, which are typically graduates, and particularly in an offshore environment like Vietnam or India, where you're getting in graduates and younger people that don't understand Australian tax. It's hard for them to learn, and it's hard for them to be able to do the volume of work. But it does work for some firms. We often say to some of the firms that are starting to work with us, look, send some of the work off to these providers. We have a few that we recommend. Get the workflow up to date so that we can help you to build an offshore team. But that's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. Offshoring is really moving a process outside of a country. So you're moving a process being a task, or you're moving a role being a person to an offshore environment. Project approach, where you can just get a one-off fixed fee for a duration of a project. And then there's the dedicated outsourcing. And this is the fastest growing area within the accounting space, and it's the area that we're working in. It's the area that we see obviously being the optimal mix of having an onshore team, an offshore team, and having a dedicated provider that understands you as a business and has been built for you as a business. So we're going to talk around some of the offshoring myths that we hear. We often hear these out in the industry when I'm speaking at different events. Offshoring takes jobs away. That couldn't be further from the truth. I think we have 250 clients currently. I would say 249 of them have all increased their staff locally over the last couple of years, as well as increasing their team globally. So offshoring doesn't take away jobs. It grows jobs and gets the right people to do the right work in the right location. It's a big concern to clients. Again, very few of our clients have any of their clients actually commenting or saying anything. The only time a client of yours will ever comment is when the quality of the work that you are delivering to them is not at the standard that they would expect, or their work is not being done in time. Now, that's not an offshoring problem, that's a firm problem. There's a lot of accountants that are out there saying, all these people using you, Nick, are doing it for cost savings. Cost savings is not the reason to build a global team. It's a benefit from it, but it's not a reason. It's about getting the right people to do the right work at the right cost in the right location. Poor security, I can guarantee you our security is is probably 15 times more secure than any offices in Australia, particularly accounting firms that I've seen. Our offices have security personnel. We have cameras throughout them. We have no USB drives. We have no CD drives. Employees can't print unless they have the authority to. Internet usage is monitored. There's no files on desks. I mean, we're talking about security and we're talking about privacy. New legislation's come in place only a couple of weeks ago in Australia around cybersecurity and privacy. I've walked into that many accounting firms that you walk in there and there's files left on desks at night time. That's a direct breach of privacy legislation. So privacy and security are not an issue. Poor quality, and this one came up on the podcast again that I did this morning with Kimberly. The poor quality is really around where clients just don't train their staff. So they put them, it's like putting a new employee in an office, in your office in Australia, closing the door and saying, there's a bunch of work, good luck, I'm not going to give you any training. If you do that with a global team, then you're going to get the same results. Poor communication, again, not a factor. Offshoring is a long-term solution. It's not a short-term fix. They're part of your team and they're part of your culture, and that's a big key that you need to be able to focus on when growing your team. So when we're looking at how do you actually build and grow a team, and it really comes down to 3 areas, and this doesn't mean having an offshore team, it could mean a local team, it could be a range of things, but there's 3 key areas. There's process, there's technology, and the third one is obviously around people. And where we see firms really struggling is around the process and the technology piece. The people piece is really around where they just don't map out the people they need to be able to get to reach the capacity that the firm has. The other part of it is we see so many firms just not utilizing technology. So a lot of the content that I'm going to run through now is in our playbook. So I do recommend go to our website. On the front page of it, which is theoutsourcedaccountant.com, there is an ebook download. Download this ebook. This really talks around how to grow and onboard an offshore team and get them up and running. It also talks around the different models that I've spoken about briefly. It goes into a lot more detail about what I'm going to cover off probably for the next 15 to 20 minutes. So when we're talking around process, the first key is just map your key processes to start. I was talking to an accountant in Brisbane last week that came along to our breakfast event that we ran. He's not a client of ours, and he said, Nick, I'm a sole practitioner. Oh, sorry, he's not a sole practitioner. He has 3 staff in Australia, and he goes, I just don't know where to start. I have so much work. I don't have time to be able to train someone offshore. I don't know where to start. But what I was thinking is getting an accountant, and I'll just give them the tax return work. And how quick can I do that? How quick can I get them trained up and running? And I looked at him and said, mate, how many hours a week are you working? He said, look, I'm working 12 to 15 hours a day. I said, okay, that's excessive as it is. I said, what about your rest of your team? He said, look, they're working long hours as well. They're not extremely happy because of that. I need to give them resources, but I don't have the money to be able to do that because we're a growing firm. And when we spoke about it, I said to him, look, the easiest way to look at it is what work can we take off your existing team right now? So get them to write down what is the work that they do on a daily basis. What work can we take off them that is very pretty much straightforward process, that we can push to a global team, train them up really quickly, and they can get up and running with that really quickly. And when we looked at the work that he could do, he worked out that he could free up at least 40 to 50% of each of the 3 people that he had in Australia by just taking a lot of the administration work off them. So what we said to him is just map out your core processes. So go through and just map out your process. It doesn't have to be in fancy software. It can just be on a written document. It could be on Google Docs, whatever it is. Just map out what are the steps involved in the task that you do. When you're looking at starting offshoring, just focus on 1 or 2 key areas. Where are the areas that we can get the best benefit straight away? So map out those core processes and then break down what task needs to be done locally and what task needs to be done globally in a global environment. Now, the easiest way to train an offshore team is use a system like Snagit, where when you're training the team member on Skype or any of the different softwares, you simply just record it. Or when you're doing the work in Australia, and you may have 5 accountants in your office, if they're doing work, get them to record what they are doing and overlay by explaining what they're doing as they're doing it. Suddenly you've created a massive library of training videos for both your local and your global team as you bring on new employees. It doesn't have to be complicated. Now, for our business, one of our core focuses last year as part of our strategic planning was we wanted to really fine-tune and build out our processes so that in the next quarter we could refine them. In 1 quarter alone, we filmed and recorded and documented 200 processes. Now that seems like a lot. We had a team of about 70 people and it was 3 each. Accounting firms don't have as many processes as we would have. So what we do is say to you, just get each of your team to focus on 1 a week. Now, if you have 10 team members and they're doing 1 a week, in a month you've got 40 documented. In a year, you've got 480 processes documented. It doesn't have to be complex. It's start with the priorities, get capacity, and then move through the order as you continue along the journey. I could talk all day on process, but it's a very short snapshot of that today. Now, when we're talking about technology, is just get your basic stack sorted. Now, for a bookkeeping division, and this is a slide that we've got from Receipt Bank when we did the roadshow with them, but we're saying get your technology stack right so that you can get your people right. If, for example, you're doing bookkeeping, get your system like Receipt Bank or HubDoc up and running. That's going to save significant hours of data entry. You don't need to employ people offshore or locally to do the data entry in a lot of cases where technology can do it, and it's a very simple process. It's a matter of retraining your team members. There's obviously systems like Approval Max. We personally use that for TOA, which is a way for all of our costs to be approved before obviously they're spent and out and into the system. Using cloud technology, again, whether it be Xero, Insure, Mild, whichever system it is, and then looking at what are the plug-in systems to add more value at the back of that. So getting a technology stack, one of the ones that I really love that isn't in this slide is Practice Ignition, which really helps you onboard a client. It saves anywhere between 2 and 4 hours for every single client per year. So if you look at the fact that you've got 400 clients in your firm and it can save you 2 hours a year, that's a significant time saving. It onboards your new clients in a really efficient and easy way. But getting a technology stack, what is it that you can do to automate the process of onboarding or new engagements with existing client? What technology should you be using for every single client within that process? And obviously bookkeeping is one element which will have its stack. You'll have another stack around other areas. So it's fascinating. It's just around get the ones that are going to add the most value to you. What's going to save you time right now? And then getting those implemented and making sure that you're using the technology to its full extent. Now, a lot of our clients, when we talk around this technology piece, we say you're building a global team. Why would you not have your global team be the specialist in these technology platforms to ensure that you're using them to the full extent? The average age of our employees in the Philippines, we've got 765 staff at the moment. Average age is 30, 70% female. They love technology. They're very innovative. They're very good with technology. So let them be the ones that are driving and setting up your technology stack to maximize the efficiency of your firm in a global sense. What roles do you start with is probably one of the biggest challenges we have with firms, and it's really around identifying the key processes as opposed to roles. Now in Australia, when we employ people, we employ an accountant and we give them everything and anything. But when you're building a global team, what we're looking to do is build immediate capacity for long-term growth. And it really comes down to what are the key processes or elements of the task that you want done with your offshore team to free up the time of your local team. Now we've got a lot of clients that are doing the full process over in our Philippines office. They are maximizing the use. They are no different to their Australian accountants, but it is a journey to get them there. It's not going to happen in the first few months. These are clients that have been doing it for a few years now. So what are some of the quick wins that you can get? And we see really 3 key roles where we're getting clients with real quick wins. The need for an EA or an executive assistant or a personal assistant. Now this one, again, I'll use Kimberly's scenario that she gave me on the podcast recording that I did earlier today. So she said to me, Nick, after your roadshow last year where you talked around the value of an EA, I went and I analysed for 3 to 4 weeks what I spent most of my time doing. And what I found is that each day I was spending anywhere between 3.5 to 4 hours on just booking appointments, confirming appointments, rescheduling appointments. So if you look at a typical charge out rate of a partner, anywhere between $250, I've seen up to $600 an hour or more. If you look at your time, and even if it's $300 an hour, but you're spending 4 hours a week on tasks that you could get someone else to do, then that's going to save you in billable hours $1,200 for the cost of someone that's going to cost you between $250 and $300 a week. So you're going to be making an extra $1,000 a week by utilizing your time in a billable sense, as opposed to doing things that are really just process or orientated or administrative. And we're seeing when partners actually analyze how much time they're spending in front of emails. And I'll ask this question to you: how many hours a week would you spend sitting in front of your computer versus how many hours you would spend on a phone or in front of your clients? Most accountants, when I asked this on the roadshow, spent 7 to 8 hours a day in front of the computer, and probably a couple of hours at best on the phone to their clients, or if they're proactive, they're actually sitting face to face with them. So EAs and PAs really free up partners and even managers' time for a really cost-effective way. Bookkeepers, again, this is just an area that we're seeing fast growth. Accounting firms are wanting to automate the compliance process. Cloud technology is a great enabler for that. And implementing a bookkeeping division just makes the process so much more seamless. The offshore team are really doing the processing of the work. The local team are the client-facing, onboarding, relationship role. It's more of a BDM as opposed to an accountant or a bookkeeping traditional role. We're seeing accountants are obviously, when I look at any of the studies, and I know Panelix brought some research out a couple of weeks ago around accountants are typically doing about 400 hours a year of administration tasks. Now, why are they doing that when you could take that work off them, put it into a global environment, and have them doing the work that they should be doing and that they want to be doing, as opposed to just doing administration work? So what roles are possible in building a global team? And the slide I'm going to show you, it really comes up with all of the different tasks that we have in our team in the Philippines. So it's cash flow forecasting, process-based tasks, corporate secretarial. I mean, that's a big one. Typically, firms are paying someone a lot of money in Australia to do something that is automated and can be done through technology or cloud-based technology. We're seeing accounting work, bookkeeping work, business advisory work, SMSF setups, full SMSF processing. If you've got finance or financial planning divisions, we have all of those roles being done. So there isn't many roles that we don't have in our global team. The question is really around what work is your firm doing? What elements of those processes and tasks can we push to a global team and build that out so that that work's not being done locally? We're seeing fast growth in support services to our clients. So roles that could be where they're doing now marketing roles, you know, websites, branding, marketing support. I mean, in our marketing team, we've got our Chief Marketing Officer, our global CMO, which is Ross, and then he has a marketing team of 25 staff. We have a full production crew, being video production and animation. We have content writing. We have the day-to-day graphic design and web development stuff. There's all those skills that are over there. Customer support, you know, sales, direct campaigns, email campaigns, social media, operations. The roles that you can put there are endless. It really comes back to what's your firm strategy? How do we make your firm more efficient? How do we take the process-oriented tasks from your team here, push that work down to a global team? And over the years, as your global team grows, so too will the skill set and the ability, meaning at some point you'll have a team that can do the high level work that you're doing in Australia, and then have your Australian team just really being client facing. So the next section I'll go over very quickly because we are running out of time, but it's really around how do you select a partner? How do you find a partner like us, or there's myriads of them out there now, that is going to help you to grow? And it really comes back to, you know, what is the business? You know, are they just a specialist in accounting? What's their history with accounting? Do they understand accountants? Do they understand the culture? One of the biggest examples of, you know, we're an employer of choice. We're the 4th largest employer of accountants in the Philippines. We're the largest in one of the areas that we work in the north of the Philippines. And the reason why we attract the best talent is that we understand accountants. Our offices are set up for accountants. If they work at a typical outsourcing provider, it's like a call center environment where the desks are very small, it's very crammed, there's no work areas, there's no cafes, it's just built to maximize the number of people in there. When we design our offices, it's all very people-centric. We design the offices for our people, which are accounting and professional services. We have 100+ seat cafes in there. We have breakout rooms. We have one-on-one rooms. We have rest areas. The offices are designed and built for our people that are accountants and professional people. So selecting a provider that provides for the services that you are needing and wanting. Evaluating your partner's technology and communication. Do they understand the software you use, and do they understand how you work as a business so that they can make sure that your internet speed is there and reliable, that the hardware and software is right, that the internal communication and external fits for what your firm needs. Now, when we're looking at choosing, obviously, around offshore providers, one of the other things that we really say is look at how that business is managed. Who are the people that are in the business that understand the industry that you're working with, and how many support staff do they have for your team? So I know for our business, for example, we run one support staff for every 5 team members working for clients. Now at our optimal level, we're running 1 employee for 7 client employees. Now I know a lot of firms are running it probably 5 times worse than that. So I know one of our competitors has a similar size business to us. We've got 130 support staff. They're running at about 40 support staff. So are you able to get the support that you need to be able to grow? Because it is a partnership. It's growing, us growing and providing the services for you to enable you to be able to do that. And for us to help you work with what technology do you need, this is what we're seeing other clients doing. These are the things that you should be considering and doing. Our big focus for our last roadshow was around how do we help our clients that are doing bookkeeping to make it more technology focused. We did an analysis of our business, and around 400 of our staff were doing some form of bookkeeping work, but only 25% of them were using technology like HubDoc or Receipt Bank. Now, a lot of my clients said to me when we're on the roadshow, why do you want us to use technology? Because that's going to take away some of the roles that we have with you. And I said, it's a great question, but the reality is the technology will do that anyway. So what we want your offshore team to be doing is doing higher value work and taking that higher level work off your Australian team so that they can do more client focused work and more value added work. So the workload just continuously shifts over. If technology can do it, why pay human hours to do it? And a lot of firms just don't have that part locked down and done. You need to make sure, obviously, the provider has the IT security, the communications, the implementation is smooth. And the big one is just making sure that understanding you as an accounting firm. It's one of our benefits and one of the reasons why we only focus on accountants. So for example, when Xero came in a couple of weeks ago, or it was over a month ago now, where they said it's mandated where 2-step authentication is put in place. Now, we don't allow mobile phones, and most providers don't allow mobile phones in their work environment. So we had to do a workaround where 400 of our staff had a Google Chrome application downloaded onto their computers, and that gives them the code to be able to put in for the 2-step authentication. Now, I know a lot of our competitors were funneling around because they just didn't know what to do. They had maybe 5 or 10 staff and they just couldn't get the technology right. We did that well in advance of the deadline. It was seamless, it was done over 2 days and it transitioned. But we understand the industry because we are part of the industry. And a big part of that is that we understand it, so we're on top of it, as opposed to you having to go and ask them to do it. How does pricing work from when you are building a global team? And I'm going to run through this very quickly. We can talk more specifically around how our model works. But when you're working on a task base or a freelancer, the employee is working remotely from their home, either locally or offshore. Now, what we are seeing with a lot of these through freelance or Odesk or a range of these is that you will put in the work that you want done, someone will generally tender for it, and now they're employing other people to actually do the work at a lower cost. We've seen a lot of cases where you post a job, they'll then repost that under another name, and they'll basically just take a margin on the job that you've basically given to them and awarded to them. But a task base or a freelancer typically will do a specific task for a set job, for a set cost. When we're looking at a project style, and we see this a lot with companies in Vietnam and India, they'll do bookkeeping for say $20 an hour. And the trick that you need to watch, or the real issue with this, is that watch what they charge you to review their own work. A lot of the time they'll charge you an hourly rate to do the work, but then they'll overlay that with a significant hourly rate for them to review their own work, which then adds the actual cost to be quite high. Where we do like it, we've got a few companies that we recommend if people do have capacity issues, where you have set fees. So a super fund will cost $300 to get it done. So that's really a short-term project where you get it, you get the capacity back, and that allows you to build and grow a longer term or an offshore global strategy. Where it's an offshoring, where you're building your own team, you are basically paying for the cost of the employee plus the managed service costs on top of that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more around that. So when we're looking at the fees, we're looking at a set cost for the managed service each month, which generally is, for us, it's $700 a month. And then the employee cost on top of that, which includes all of their allowances, training fees, all of the costs involved in managing and growing that employee. And generally it rounds out to be anywhere between $1,300 a month up to about $2,500, and it really depends on what the role is. We can, again, happy to talk to anyone about this in a lot more detail at any time after the webinar. One of the big things that we're really focused on is when you're building a team, whether it be local or global, is how do you attract and retain the best staff? Now, we know globally, the retention rate of accountants globally is around 14%. Most firms lose, on average, 14%, and that's a global survey that shows that. One of the big focuses that we have at TOA is how do we make our people better people? It's not just about them coming to work and being technicians. So some of the things that we have in our offices, we have full medical clinics. So we have doctors that are on staff, we have full-time nurses that are on staff, we have a wellness program where we want to make our people better people. So that means a lot around growth mindset. It means around how do we make our people fitter, healthier? How do we help them to become more active? How do we then train them to become more educated? And how do we continue to grow them so that we have a large amount of people wanting to work for us and continue to stay with us? And that's really around building world-class facilities that are focused around and people-centric. We don't build our offices for us, we build them for our people. There's a photo on screen that you'll see. It's called BC12. That's our latest, that's our fourth new office that's getting built. There's about 2,400 square meters getting fitted out in the coming few months. And again, in there, we've got a 150-seat cafe. We've got breakout rooms. It's really built for what our people want and need. So how do you get your firm ready? How do you build your team to get your firm ready so that you can start this? Because it is a journey. So I'm going to talk about this really quickly because we are running out of time, but it's really around building out a people strategy. You're not making anyone redundant. You're not making roles in Australia changing. You're just simply making it, how do we build out a people strategy to make your local team more efficient? And how do we make your overall global team add value to your local team? So there's some real key actions around this is obviously mapping out your people strategy, mapping out the tasks and roles that are needed and that are going to start you on the journey. There's a whole process involved. We'll hold your hand the whole time. It sounds like there's a lot of work, but a lot of this we've already done with 250 clients. We already understand it. We'll be able to hold your hand throughout the whole process. So we're going to be able to help you obviously around the people part. We'll teach you how to communicate, the rhythms you need to go through, the planning and strategy you need to go through. How do you reward and recognize your team? How do you understand the Philippines culture because it's new, it's not something you've done before? And what technology are you going to utilize to maximize growing your offshore team? The biggest win that you can have is with great communication, both locally and globally. So I'm going to skip through that part of it. Reward and recognition. We have a significant amount of, we know the playbook. We know how you can best manage your team to get the best out of them. Now, we run social events every month in the Philippines. We have team building events where it's both educational focused. We obviously have things like Valentine's Day, making our team really feel valued. And then it's around how do you just add value to them and recognize the work that they are doing for you. Now, I spoke again on my podcast this morning. Kimberly has some real structure around how they make their global team part of their overall operation in Australia. This is not just an offshore team. This is your team. It's your firm's team. You now just have a distributed workforce in a global environment. Now, there's a lot, obviously, that we've covered today. I've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to fast track through the last few bits. I do thank you for your patience today. I know there's been a lot. All of this information is in our ebook, so please go to our website, download it, take the time to review it. We've got, outside of that playbook, when we do have new clients that we're onboarding, we hold your hand through that onboarding journey, through the recruitment journey. We have a video series that we send you around how to educate your local team, how to get your offshore team up and running. Book a time to chat to one of our global team specialists to work through what this process is for you. Now, I'm going to quickly run one quick poll, which will only be 30 seconds before I round off, which is a quick question. Would you like a one-on-one consultation to see how leading firms started and are running? It's a no obligation appointment with one of our global team specialists. Just a quick yes or no capture. And we will be able to then contact you and organise a time. For those that don't, I really highly suggest download the ebook. Make sure you continue to monitor our webinars that we run, which will lead me on to the next part. We have launched last week our new peer podcasts. So we're interviewing and releasing once a week a podcast interview of our clients. So what we understand is our clients have gone through this journey. They've been on this journey. A lot of the ones that are on the slide now, Mark said, Jamie Johns, have been on this journey for 5 years. You know, Neil Jarrett, or Jerry as we call him, he's been on it for 2.5 years. Annie, you know, she's not even an accountant, but she owns an accounting firm. They got real fascinating stories around how has offshoring actually added value to their firm. So I highly recommend going to our website. It's on the resources page under the podcast and checking that out. We also have in our resources section on the website, what we call the Ledger Accounting blog. So every week we send out content around articles not to be missed from the industry updates, event summaries, and just what's going on within TOA that we can help continue to educate you. So I do appreciate your time. We've finished right on time. If you do have any questions, please pop them into the question box. We'll stay online for a couple of minutes and answer any questions that do come in. But for the rest of, I'll let you all jump off the webinar today. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We're really excited and happy to chat to you about how we can help build your offshore journey and really help you build a global team that adds more value, helps you attract the best staff in Australia and really grow your team both locally and globally. So thank you for your time. Really look forward to chatting to you all again soon at an event out in the accounting world that I'm at. See you soon.